Spiritism, and we're going to be going through chapter 2, the second part of Through the Mist, the Judgment Hall. Very exciting. The book is about a very good man, a very religious person who believed in God, believed in the spirit world, and he was just like amazed to find out, some of his misconceptions when he arrived. And chapter 1 was how he rescued or tried to rescue a little boy that was in the middle of a very crowded highway. Now, when I mean roadway, it's full of. This is at the end of the 19th century, so it was full of horse-drawn carriages in London. He thought he rescued the boy because he woke up on this grassy knoll, and he had the boy in his arms, and yet they both died. Right, they were both run over. Probably they didn't feel anything. They just all of a sudden they were there. And so he'd been through that, and he's talked to a spirit that talked to him that is helping him out. And then we will continue the second part of that chapter. But before I begin, I'd like to start with a prayer as before we start. Dear Jesus, thank you for our opportunity to talk about the spirit world, the spirits, heaven, your kingdom, our physical kingdom on earth, and about Spiritism, the doctrine that was brought to us by Allan Kardec, who enlightened our lives through the spirit of truth. It was the Spirit's book was codified by Allan Kardec, and we know that through your spirit missionaries and benefactors, you helped us and you revealed the whole spirit world to us. Please inspire us, help us grow spiritually, help us learn who we are and how to improve. Amen. And for those who are interested in Spiritism, I would like to introduce you to a book I have in PDF, totally free, Spiritism 101, the Third Revelation, on my website, blog, I should say, nwspiritism.com. And again, you can get that for free. It's on PDF. You can just download it right from there. It's also on Kindle, paperback, and Audible format. Well, also, when I was talking about in my prayer for Allan Kardec in the Spirit's book, was codified by Allan Kardec, asking a series of 1,019 questions to spirits throughout Europe. And it's just a wonderful book. And I would read that next. I would first get kind of a overview of the Spiritist doctrine, and then you can read the Spirit's book. Now you can, of course, get that on Amazon or click on his picture on my blog, or again, download it free on PDF, Allan Kardec space the Spirit's book. Also, I'd like to make sure that everybody knows that there is a movie called Allan Kardec on Netflix, which kind of gives you the whole how he organized the book and what he went through back in the 1850s. Okay, let us go through the book where we are on chapter 2, and about the middle of chapter 2. Hope everybody can see that. So, as I said before, he's in this grassy plain, and a spirit came up to him and said, "Okay, follow me. I'm the first person you've talked to, which is great, and I'm supposed to take you to another location." And she goes, "Well, let me start from here." It says, "Past it, where I have no knowledge." He goes, "Perhaps not, but it says that you passed through the portal to heaven. Perhaps not, but it lies there in those mists from which you see so many coming into the plain." As she spoke, she pointed the direction to which my attention had been previously called. So he was on this grassy knoll, and it kind of slanted down into this mist in which he could see spirits who were colorfully dressed in different colors, and yet they were helping. They could tell that they could help it, like the newly passed over, and let them rest on that grassy area, and then other spirits would come and help them away from there. "Is that the way I came?" I asked. "Yes, that is the only way of entrance into this life." Now, there are other ways, many different ways that people find themselves into heaven, but for him, that's what she said. Again, one of the great truths is that spirits won't, if you say something and it's not correct, they're not going to correct you. They're not going to say, "Oh no, that's totally wrong." No, they're just going to keep you going and let you learn on your own for many things. That they will help you things that when you're ready to be open to it. But that's also why many prophets are wonderful people who say they've been at visions and gone into heaven, and yet they don't believe in reincarnation. That's because if they don't believe in something, they're not going to be challenged on it. The great medium, Edgar Casey, was a very strong Christian and did not believe in reincarnation. And yet he kept having information about all these previous lives from people who would ask him questions. Finally, he came to his own conclusion. Yes, there's reincarnation. It wasn't like a spirit said, Edgar, you're wrong. There is reincarnation. That's not how it's going to work. You are going to be given opportunity to delve into things deeper, and they will gently kind of guide you to the right place, but they're not going to say, no, you have to believe this way. That's not how the spirit world works. Okay, because I knew nothing of it, was not conscious of anything till I found myself lying here where we are now standing. And then she said, that's quite possible, since yours was one of those sudden passages, because he was run over, which hurry you so quickly into the state as to leave no consciousness of the event. I often think it's a great blessing to come in such a way. Why? But do I worry you with my questions? And she said, no, it will be a pleasure to tell you as much as possible, though, as I have not been here so very long. You'll have many questions to ask that I cannot answer, and will have to submit them to others who know more than me. And he said, I feel that you're just the teacher that I require at the present, since all is so different from what I expected. I'm like a child with everything to learn. She said, I shall be glad to tell you what I can, but you must not talk of being tired, for no one wearing our color can grow weary. Wearing our color, I repeated, not knowing what she meant. Yes, you will presently understand that the color of the dress is an indication of the condition of the wearer, but you cannot grasp this until you have seen it for yourself. So imagine dying, and then you're in this world, and you know you're dead, but you still feel like yourself. And then here is the spirit who wishes to remain anonymous. So shows that he's wearing like a different color tunic. And he doesn't know what the color meant, and yet he feels great. And he feels tired because he's confused, and he still hasn't just completely detached from the physical life. There are many people who, when they pass over, will still feel the effects of maybe the disease that killed them until they finally understand that they've come over, they're free of the physical life, and then they'll know that the disease is nothing to them. They are completely whole, healthy, and immortal. So, but and then of course there's many different ways. There's books of people showing up in a convalescent hospital, kind of a convalescent room, and not knowing that they are dead, thinking they just recovered from their operation. And the nurse says, "Oh, I hope you feel better." It goes, "Yes, but where's my doctor?" And they go, "Oh, we'll let you know in a bit, right? Just rest and relax, right?" They're not going to say, "Hey, you're dead." No, that's not how it works. They're not going to shock you. That they're going to let you ease into this into your real life, your spirit life. And then she says, and then he goes, "But tell me why you think it's best to enter this life in the manner which I came." And then she said, if you will regard the entrance of a soul into this life as birth rather than death, and the sickness preceding it as more or less prolonged labor with a corresponding prostration to follow, you'll understand me better. See, she continued, pointing towards the mist, how many have to be assisted, some even carried into life, how some pause to gain strength to come forward. And tell me, do you not think it's preferable to come as you have done? He goes, well, when you consider it in that light, of course it is. But we have been taught to look upon it from the other side. And then she says, that is a great error, which has to be corrected here. Man practically regards the earth life as the chief, rather than the subordinate condition of existence. As a spiritual being, he should be educated to look upon everything from a spiritual standpoint, in the same way as a schoolboy is encouraged to regard his studies in the light of what they will afterwards enable him to accomplish. Earth is not all, neither is it a finality of development, but rather the elementary stage upon which this is the next advance. While the errors of the lower state have to be uprooted here before we can assume the positions we should be fitted to enter upon our arrival. However, more will be forcibly illustrated for you presently. So she has said such great truths in that one paragraph. First, as Leon Denis said, and he was a great medium, came after Allan Kardec, from what the spirits told him is that death is much nicer than birth. It's less painful and difficult. So at birth, you're going into this earth world that is not like your whole being. It's not, it's not, you're not a physical being where you live and die and then you're completely gone. It's a place to learn, just like he says. It's encouraged to regard studies in light of what they will afterwards enable him to accomplish. Earth is a school, Earth is a campus, and it's not a very advanced campus. As a free-willed spirit, we start out in a primitive planet where we're tribal, and the rule is kill or be killed. But eventually we ascend to a planet of atonement, which is the Earth. Earth, of course, the whole planet Earth will ascend into a planet of atonement, but you can be sent to other planets, other campuses. A planet of atonement is where you pay for your past wrongs, and that is probably one of the most difficult. It's probably more like the middle school or junior high, as some people call it, where children in that is like can barely function. They're full of hormones and they go this way and that way and up and down, and they're hard to control. Well, that's kind of what the earth is like, is we kind of go all over. We have our desires and we take what we want, and we're not going to be stopped, and we're pretty rebellious. And hence that's why a lot of us have quite a few lives with difficult trials and tribulations, because we are here for the sole purpose to take out our primitive emotions, hate, jealousy, selfishness, pride, and replace them with more civilized emotions of love, charity, fraternity, and honesty, to name a few. That is a tough road to hoe, and you can't do that in one life. That is why there's reincarnation, and that's why karma will decide the trials and tribulations of your next life. What you do in this life will help lay the blueprint for your next life. So when people ask me, how can I not be reincarnated again? Or I don't like it here on earth, I go, well, live this life as well as you can, and your next life will be much better. Now, when you're in a spirit world, you can decide, hey, if you're in heaven, if you're in the lower zone or like the dark abyss, which is the type of purgatory, you have no choice in the matter, and your trials and tribulations are decided upon superior spirits. If you are in any of the levels of heaven, you will consult with other spirits and more advanced spirits of what trials you should go through. Not only trials, but what you're going to look like, your whole appearance and the health of your body. You are part of that process. So for those of you who believe you've been in a good place before, know that the things that happen to you, you help decide. And that when something that you don't like, something dramatic that you wished hadn't happened, know well that that is something that you asked for, because you wanted that to give you stimuli to analyze your own personality and character and morality and make improvements. That is the key point that I want people to come from what he's talking about right here. And then he says, I'm anxious to hear about something about the judgment hall. If I came through it unconsciously, as I must have done, how can a righteous sentence be passed upon a man in such condition? So he is thinking that when he dies, he'll go to St. Peter at the gate and can I come in or not? Oh, okay, right. Now, that's not how it works. Now, there is, it works more benignly. So, the law of affinity, if you are a pretty rotten person, let's say, ignorant person who's done bad things, you will leave your body and you'll just be like on this lower zone, and you may have your kind of criminal friend say, hey, come over here, let's have a good time on the earth. And and there's no morality, and they may be mean to you and take you somewhere where they can torture you. I mean, that does happen, unfortunately. On the other hand, you may be taken up to a very nice place like this spirit was taken, maybe taken to a little convalescent place. You are taken to where you belong. Now, how does that work? It is called the law of affinity, where like associates with like. Earth is a place that you can live in a neighborhood, and across the street can be the most rotten people, criminals, or across the street can be the most enlightened, wonderful, saintly people. You're just all mixed together. Whereas in heaven, you are segregated by your attitude and your spiritual quotient, your spiritual level, your level of morality and knowledge. So to ascend in heaven, you have to you have to improve your personality and character to be a more spiritual, moral, loving person, and you have to gain knowledge about the spirit universe and how everything works. There is a lot to learn. Now, the memory of how all this works will come back to you eventually. It's not like you have to start over like you do on the earth. I carry on. The idea of the judgment hall is another misapprehension owing to the literal interpretation of what was only intended as a parabolic metaphor. Do you mean that I have no knowledge of it for the simple reason that no such place exists? I ask. So far as there being a regular trial and sentence by a personal judge, it is a fiction. And of course, we've been told I've been told by a medium who remembered that she was part of a group that would take people who had just recently died, help convince them that they had died. Because believe me, it is hard a lot of times, and I've been in medium meetings where people said, am I dead? Well, yeah, you are. Does anybody talk to you when you ask them stuff who are, that you thought were alive when you just died? No. And what she says is it takes a pretty while sometimes to convince people. And she'll say, well, where were you when you died? And he goes, well, I was there. He goes, well, what happened? What was happening? And then finally they get to the point where they understand that they're dead. But then what she says, she takes them to the city, the spiritual colony, wherever they belong, and they will meet with kind of like social workers. They'll describe, they will review their life, and they'll say, hey, what you did well, what could be improved. Very, very informative and very nice group of people. In fact, you read the same thing from near-death experiences, and it's a central theme a lot. So they come and they talk to people, and they go through what they did right and they did wrong. In fact, one NDE, they went through his life and they decided, okay, well, I think you need to go back. He goes, yes, I do need to go back. I'm not done yet. And he went back into the physical life. So it had a little interlude. And also the point is, it's in heaven is so nice, and the emotional environment is just full of love and just makes you feel so good. Is that one spirit said, no, don't hug me, because if you hug me, you'll feel the full effect of the spirit world and you'll never want to go back. So that's how that is. So I'll carry on with what she's saying. The verdict of the bar of God is more just and unerring than that could be, and asks no evidence other than the defendant offers. The text which hung above my bed in the hospital is the law upon which that judgment is given, and from which no appeal is asked or granted. Be not deceived, God is not mocked, for whatsoever a man soweth, that shall he also reap. Again, and we've told this over and over in spiritualist literature, for every action there is a reaction. You get what you deserve. I carry on. Justice cannot miscarry, since no man is called to give evidence against his fellow. As the soul comes into contact with those mist, it separates from the flesh and is stripped of any false and seeming character which may have been assumed, no matter under what circumstances or for what purpose. The function of the mist is to dissolve everything but the spiritual. So, first, you don't need to have a separate evidence because every thought and every action you ever had is recorded in the spirit world and it is analyzed as you come over. And your whole character and attitude is evident by anyone who sees you. They can look at you, they can read your thoughts, and the amount that you have your aura and you shine, not from light that comes within you. Your shininess comes from the reflection because you have love. It's a reflection of love off you back again because the spirit universe is permeated with the love of God. So you can't hide. You can't say, hey, I'm a really nice person. Well, no, I can see that you don't have much of an aura. I'm sure you're a good person, but you're not as high as you thought. In fact, there's this a wonderful book, Voltaire. It's still in Portuguese. I wish it was in English. And from what my wife told me about it, she's can read Portuguese. This guy was actually in charge of a Spiritist center, and when he passed over, he thought he would be this glowing angel, but he was pretty dull. And of course, God bless him. He writes this. I mean, it's like the book Memoirs of a Suicide. These spirits, they just write the absolute truth about themselves. What great people. And he goes, yeah, okay, well, I have a lot to learn. And because actually one of the lower spirits came up to him and said, for someone in charge of a Spiritist center, you're not that bright. And he goes, yes, you're right. So that's why Jesus said for us to be humble, because we should be. Okay. Then she said, there all the seals of life are broken. Everything which has been hidden is revealed. The books are open wide, whether to acquit or to condemn. It would just be as rational to expect a builder to say, as he put the final touches to a cottage, that ought to have been a cathedral, and I believe it is, or for a farmer to say to his men, that field of turnips should have been wheat, and I believe it is. Go and reap it, and find their belief honored in this transformation. As for a man, when he feels the chill of dissolution upon him, to think that by acceptance of any creed or system of belief, he can, in that moment of fear, eradicate the evils of a lifetime and receive an abundant entrance into everlasting joy? No, Fred, that's the spirit's name. As the mortal drops away, there is evolved from the spirit a natural covering in accordance with its life and character, the color being determined by the acts and motives of the past, not by the creeds it has held or the professions it has made. And that color is the righteous sentence, which the soul has passed upon itself by the virtue of the invariable law of God. So let's talk about that for a second. There was a pope who died, and he was kind of one of the lower sections of heaven. He wasn't very high, and he was very like, why aren't you treating me like I should be like the right hand man of God here? And then he went back down and stayed for thousands of years, or maybe less than 1,000, into the dark abyss, the lower zone, or the purgatory type, because he had so much pride. Imagine there was another great section by this woman that the spirit under Louise met as she was being taken to a kind of a halfway house for spirits who were just being out of the lower zone and finally deciding that they needed to get better. She goes, I can't believe I was in that terrible place. And he goes, well, why? He goes, I paid, our priest said I would go right to heaven because I paid so much money, and I also paid my son to every Sunday, to hold a prayer for me, so I would, keep rising in heaven and be in a wonderful location. And she goes, so it was like amazing to her that she, just because she she was one of the rich people in the church, that she wasn't right in heaven. Imagine how corrupt people and some of our corrupt politicians who are in power, how they're going to be when they pass over and they go into really low areas and they're treated as they treated others. For those who've held great power and yet used it horribly and used it as totalitarians, there's going to be some surprises there. God bless them. And I feel sorry for them because I've been told I've done that too, that I've been in charge of people. And instead of helping people, I have taken money and wealth. So I don't hate them. I just say, not going to be like you think. So I'll carry on. When you subordinate faith to works, it goes, works are to faith precisely what the spirit is to the body, the life. Faith without works is dead. Therefore, faith can only be manifested by works. The teaching of Jesus is, as much as ye did it, not believed it, and nothing but love and noble deeds are able to enter this life in company with the soul. All forms of belief are lost in yonder mist. And when she says all forms of beliefs, she means preconceptions about heaven, preconceptions about, do I have to wear something? Do I have to not eat something? Should I hate somebody else because they believe in a different name of a God? I mean, all those things, they all fade away, right? And what we're told is the lower levels of heaven, people still have their own kind of cultural centric and maybe religious centric or groups. But then as you go higher and higher, you learn that everyone's a brother and sister, no matter what they believe or what they didn't believe or where they were or what class they were, or any of that, what country they came from. Is we're all here. The campus is called Earth, and they're all there to improve. It's like it's like when you're in high school, and I don't know if every country does this, but in our high school they always had like a class president, and and people voted for them, and it's like believing that class president in high school is important, because it's about as much as believing the politicians we have leading us are important too. The answer is not really. They're part of the background. They're part of the scenery. Because when you are on Earth, you have to look at it as that you are the central character in a play. Now, most good writing and good plays and movies, they have a central character, and that character goes through different scenes in their life, and they grow from the interactions with different people by acquiring different knowledge. And therefore, where you're born and what happens to you, and if people do bad things to you, you have to consider that that's just an actor in the play that's playing the part picked by them by the spirit world, picked for them by the spirit world. And that the government that's in your country and where you are, you should help to improve it, right? I'm not saying just be completely apathetic, but look at it as more of a set, right? A set in the theater, scenery, and know that you're into this time and political era and culture in order to give you certain stimuli, in order to elicit you to actually fundamentally transform your character for the better. Because that's why you're here. Nothing else. Transform your character for the better, help yourself, help others. Love all. Follow the golden rule. That's Spiritism right there. Then he asks, who then can be saved? Oh, we hope that every individual child will ultimately, and I think if one shall be accepted, it'll be his own fault entirely. Why so? He asked. Because that judgment is not final. It only determines what position the soul must assume on entering this life. It still has the power to elevate itself, as well as the assistance of others who are always working to raise those in the conditions beneath them. Thus, the sentence is not for eternity and vindictive. It is probationary and remedial. Goes, why, Helen, do you mean to say there's no hell? And she says, not by any means. We have hells of torment far worse than your imagination can picture, but they are only purifying conditions and have been provided in the fullness of our Father's love, as you will be presently be made to understand. And the interesting thing about hell, of course, there's no eternal punishment. It's when you're ready. And there are horrible sections in there, but they're horrible because that's where you belong with like associated with like the law of affinity. And of course, people can get out of that. Now, the interesting thing is, well, how do you make these people become better? And we think of when we fight evil that like an old western where the good gunman comes into town and has his gun, his pistol, and kills all the bad guys. But that's not how it works in the spirit world. The spirit world is much smarter than that because they want all those people, even those so-called bad guys in that western town, to become good someday. And the way God and Jesus fight evil is they use evil to fight evil. So let me give you an example. You're this minor criminal, and yet you go to this place in the dark abyss or purgatory, and you're with other minor and major criminals. You get to see how you treated others, now they treat you. You get to see the full brunt of your character and personality of what you were on earth. And you get to understand what that means. Now, the other thing to remember is the spirit says there's no spirit that's all good or all bad. There's always a mixture. And plus, these spirits, this minor criminal, let's say, down in the depths of purgatory, will have memories of what they've done in the past. And they'll feel bad once they analyze that. And then they'll start feeling bad that they're in this horrible place. And they will feel bad that in order to survive there, they will have to be as mean as other people. Oh, someone sent me, let me show this here for a second. So here's someone said that planetary transition, my group with translations from Chico Xavier, Ryan Foster, and Geraldine. Okay, I'm not quite sure. Well, that's interesting. But planetary transition was also a book by Devaldo Franco, which is a great book. And there's actually a second book on that one. Okay. So that's how evil is fought. Is they finally come to their own conclusion that I don't like being this way. And when they start to make changes within themselves, then spirits who are in charge of helping people down in these deep areas will come and say, "Follow me. We'll help you out. We'll take you to these little outposts and halfway houses." It's a hard trek because as you go higher and higher in the spirit world, is what they say is that you actually feel the burning of what you've done wrong, and you feel the burning of your conscience, and so it's actually hard to walk up and get out of those low levels. But once you do it, it's just a wonderful feeling. So I'll carry on. She goes, "Well, I've been fortunate in finding such a teacher to correct my ignorance," I said. "Before I saw you, I felt like a child at school whose education had been sadly neglected. But now it seems that all I know is wrong and has to be uprooted." So this is like his whole life. Like, okay, everything I read and was told doesn't really apply. I'm in this wonderful world, and we're like just like we were. I didn't turn into this angel with my harp. And then she said, "You will find that full provision has been made for all corrections as you proceed," she answered, "and knowledge is easily acquired by those who wish to learn. It is an active life upon which you enter. Every person capable of work has some appointed mission, so that we are all workers together with God. My place for the present is here to meet those who have just arrived, so I have been especially instructed in such matters as are first inquired into." Imagine that's a wonderful job. And that's why the other thing is what Spiritism tells us is heaven isn't this Elysian field where you are, reposing for infinity. And as Spirits told Allan Kardec, if that was heaven, that would actually indeed be hell, where you quickly get bored with that. No, you're given work, you learn, you go to schools, you go to colleges, you ascend in levels. And when you ascend from one level of heaven to another, it's not like you get this little diploma. You actually are given enlarged powers and capabilities, more tools in your toolbox, let's say. It's and the reason for that is a spirit, a very high spirit, let's take Jesus Christ, who was a pure spirit, has immense power. And this is where I tell people that when you understand the spirit world, it becomes more stranger than any fantasy or science fiction novel you've ever read. Imagine a fantasy novel where everyone can create with their mind. When you reach a certain level, that's why we go through this, because they're not going to let us into the higher levels of heaven who have no self-discipline. That's why we're here. We're here to have self-discipline and to correct those primitive emotions. So I'll carry on. My place for the present is here. Oh, I said that. Then it says, if the verdict is given upon works alone, who are they who receive the abundant entrance promised so liberally to believers? I asked. He goes, in that judgment, okay, then someone just said they're having difficulty with comments, so hopefully that will change. The internet will get better for some people. Where was I? Okay. In that judgment, she answered, every act, motive, and attendant circumstance in the life of a man has its legitimate consideration and is appraised at its sterling value. Of course, this is when she says sterling, that is like pounds, right? So when you die and you go up to the geographical area where you died, so there is I forgot the name of it. I think I heard it once, but I don't remember. There is a city above London, a celestial city. There is like No Solar, which is a celestial city above Rio de Janeiro. There are celestial cities above probably all major population areas, and there's smaller colonies all over. And the balance struck accordingly. Acts of charity originating in expediency are gauged by the attainment of the object desired and leave no balance in life's accounts. Munificent philanthropy bestowed for political or selfish purposes is recompensed by the approbation it received. The building and endowment of a hospital or church by wealth amassed in the drink or such like traffic is counterbalanced by the shattered lives and ruined homes of its many victims. So remember that. Spiritism said this, don't, if you can't help it, don't own like a brewery or things like that, or a bar. Try not to do that. I know it's not easy. And because you really are judged by your intent. There was a great section by the wonderful Manuel Swedenborg, who came before Allan Kardec, and I forgot how long, probably around 100 years. And it said that when you give, it's what is your motive to give? Did you do a charitable deed because you wanted to be trusted by other people so you could cheat them later? Did you did it to have everyone know that you did a charitable deed so you can be, a successful politician? Right? And that's why when Jesus said, don't let the left hand know what the right hand is doing, because when you give and your help, don't sing it out. And this is what gets me. And I'm sure all of us have seen that, where we've worked for companies and they publicize it. Oh, we've helped this group. And it's like, oh yeah, you really, right. You've helped the group, yes, but you did it not because of wanting to help. You did it in order to get kudos and to get free advertising. That's always cracks me up when I see that. But so it's really, if you do it for a selfish reason, that doesn't count. It's good that you did, right? And I'm glad you helped other people. But if you did it for any other motive than to really help that person, the answer is no. And this is what she says: self-sacrificing. Oh, let me here. Building an endowment of a hospital or church by wealth, amass and drink, or such like traffic is counterbalanced by the shattered lives and ruined homes of its many victims. Self-sacrificing love to relieve pain, distress, and want, not done to be seen of man, but from sympathy with the weak and unfortunate brother, the motive which prompts a man to give what he himself may need to lessen the suffering of another, the patient endurance of wrong until the Father determines to avenge, the charity which rises to the defense of the weak against the strong, and at the expense of obliquity and shame, the heart which refuses to condemn when appearances are black because the whole circumstances are not known. The man who, when injured, steps in to break the blow of justice because he too would wish to be forgiven. These are they who, in that judgment, lift their heads and hear, "Well done." Very well said. And of course, this is exactly what Spiritism also uh, completely agrees with, is that this is true giving. To advertise yourself and to put everything you do well on Instagram or something like that, um, really is counterproductive. But whatever. Look, you just have to laugh at these people. You can't first of all, and this is what Spiritism tells us. You can't like say, "Oh, I hate those people," or "All those people are so stupid." No, they're just young and immature spiritually, not physical age, and they will learn. They will live life after life, and they will learn what they should do. They'll learn to follow their conscience. They'll learn to be good people. They're just in a different trajectory than you are. That's why Jesus tells us to love everyone. It doesn't mean we have to invite them over for dinner and have them be our best buddies, to love and forgive. It's that just means you got to look at them and not hate them and not wish bad things to happen to them. Wish that, oh, I hope you learn through your trials and tribulations. It also doesn't mean that if they're a criminal, they shouldn't be locked up, because that's one part of learning for their trials and tribulations. And then she said, this makes all men equal in their advantages and add commensurate responsibility where wealth or power has been entrusted. And she goes, would you teach men to repudiate wealth, I ask? Certainly not. And again, this is what Spiritism tells us. Money is useful. Money is used to help other people. Let's see what she says. Certainly not, but we would teach them that every gift is only held in stewardship, and that they will be called upon to render an account in the midst. Our Father has placed upon earth enough to supply the needs and give some comforts to every one of his children. But the strong have taken away the portion of the weak until luxury and starvation abound. Is this right? No. And at judgment, the plea that the wealth was held so honorably acquired will not avail, since God designs that it must also be lovingly dispensed. Take one such man who, having made division of his wealth among his children, saw the elder taking the portion of the younger son away. Think you that father would be willing to complacently allow the wrong? Shall God be less just than we demand a man should be? Of course not. The bond of brotherhood is more powerful than the legal right in the sight of God, and the verdict of his court is given in accordance with family responsibility, not mercantile law. Let's see, here's some of the comment. If the law of affinity is valid, today's post, and you attract people on your vibrational level, how come Chico was attacked by low spirits, even damaging his eyes? Well, first of all, and that's a good point. Now, when Chico is in whatever level, I'm sure it'd be very high level in the spirit world, he will not be. So the law of affinity, what I'm saying is where you are placed when you go back into the spirit world. But it's a good question. And on earth, you're just mixed up. You're mixed up with all sorts of high, low, not kind, mischievous spirits. then that's part of, and that's part of the basic training we're going through, right? Because we're here, we're on the planet of atonement. Chico should not be on the planet. Chico volunteered to come here. He's much higher. But even then, I think they had him experience the full experience, because the low spirits tried to fight Chico all the time because he was bringing Spiritism and he was uplifting the spiritual level of the earth. And they know that as when the earth moves from a planet of atonement to a planet of regeneration, that those low spirits who are still low, they will be sent off to other planets, because when the planet of regeneration, you're not going to have that melting pot of all sorts of spirits around the earth. That's going to be different. You're not going to have bad inspirations from inferior spirits. So Chico in the spirit world, not going to be, is law of affinity, he'll be up there. Now, when as a spirit, when he wants to come down, they won't affect him because he'll be far superior. But in the physical world, you're mixed with everybody. And again, as I said before, it's like boot camp, where you're crawling under the barbed wire and the sergeant's shooting the machine gun bullets over your head, so you get used to what life is in combat. Well, it's like we're being taught the same thing. For us to rise and to become higher spirits, we have to learn how to handle the rowdy, mischievous, the liars, all of that. Because, I mean, think of when Jesus was on earth, all the people he had to meet. And also think of when spirits come here and they help people. People always lie to themselves. They'll lie to everybody, right? They'll rationalize away bad deeds, which all of us have. We're experts. A lot of times when we're teenagers, to rationalize away what our conscience is telling you. Hopefully, most of us grow out of that. But we have to be put into this cesspool, this chaotic earth, for us to learn how to not let that affect us. And that's hard, because we are bombarded in this culture where, I just want more stuff. And if I'm successful, I can act any way I want, because everyone will still think I'm great. Because if I'm wealthy, that means I'm the smartest person in the world. And and by that definition, I do whatever I want, and they just, will kiss up to me. That's how strange and backward our culture is at the present moment. So, but that's why. So he was on Earth. That's why he was attacked by low spirits. The other thing is to say, when talk about the apocalypse, right? The apocalypse, as many Christians think that will happen, that earthly people will be separated into, one or the other group. But actually, that's happening as we move to planet regeneration, where it's happening in the spirit world, where spirits who have not taken care to improve themselves, and so they're not ready to become a planet regeneration, to be on a planet regeneration. They said, okay, well, you're being moved to another planet. That's separating, the wheat from the chaff. So it's going on, but we don't see that. We don't notice that here. And as said, mostly narcissists are the problem in my case. Yeah, they're a problem in a lot of people's cases. And, but I tell you what, you just, when these problem people are in your life, it's all part of your training. And you just have to say, well, because, first, if they're giving you a hassle, think about, why are they giving you a hassle? Well, you were probably that way in some previous life first. Not an easy thing to think of, but I mean, if you really think of how we grow spiritually, a lot of us were pretty rotten. I've been told I was a horrible person, and as I've said before, I've never been told anything good I've ever done in a past life, only the bad things I've done in past life. So I think the spirit world wants me to be an example of that. If you're a really rotten person, you can become at least a decent person, not probably not the good stage yet, but at least someone who's not actively criminal. So, but just learn how to handle them, and handle them forcibly with focus. Don't be angry, and that's what we're told by, especially one of the, I forgot the name of the book by Joanna De Angelis, psychographed by Devaldo Franco, is don't use anger, use focus, and use be indignant, right? Say, nope, I'm not going to let you do that. That's not allowed. And you don't lash out your primitive emotions. You don't lash out all that hate and anger. You just say, no, there's your boundary. Sorry, not going to affect me. And if you have to withdraw, even if they're your family, forgive them, love them, but you don't have to be with them. You don't have to talk to them. Just say in your mind, say, well, God bless you. I hope you learn your lessons. And I know someday you'll be a great person. That's really how you have to handle that. Okay. Where was I here? Okay. Suppose one was anxious to carry out a good work, but pressure of circumstances prevented. How would that be regarded? And she said, that will be more ably explained to you by others presently. But in the meantime, I can partially answer it by telling you of one of the first receptions I attended after my arrival. He goes, do you hold receptions then in heaven? He goes, yes, though they are somewhat different to yours. When any friends go across the boundary to bring a pilgrim home, we call it a reception. That I refer to as one of those abundant interests you speak of. And Omra went to welcome the brother. Who is Omra? The governor of the state in the highest spirit I have seen, except Jesus. Have you seen him, Helen? Yes, once, but he was at a distance from me, so I did not speak to him. But to tell you of this reception, the man we went to meet was an inmate of a workhouse, but there were thousands of spirits present to receive him. From a workhouse? Yes, I shall never forget the scene. When Omra drew near to the bed, the closing eyes caught sight of him, and the coming saint cried to his friend, who was asleep on a chair beside him, John, John, I'm going now. Someone has come for me. John, don't you see how light the room is? See the angels? And no, not Jesus, not for me. Then the poor feeble frame, which had half risen in his excitement, fell back, and the watcher found it cold when he awoke, for the spirit has dropped its veil afresh. As the soul came away, Omra threw his arm around him and bade him welcome. Then, with a bewildered, almost frightened look, the man gazed upon the hosts that crowded around him, and turning to Omra, stammered, This is not for me. It's a mistake. You did not come for me. Yes, we did, my brother, replied Omra. We do not make mistakes. They are all behind you now. But that cannot be for me. I have not been a good man, my lord. It must be a mistake. What have I done? He fed the hungry, clothed the naked, and ministered to the sick, Omar replied. Ah, now I know you are wrong. I have been almost all my life in the workhouse. I never had any money to do it all. I knew it weren't for me. He goes, you once gave your dinner to a hungry lad, said Omra. You gave a pair of boots you could barely spare to a wandering tramp. You gave your glasses to a poor old woman who could not see to read, and left yourself in the same condition. You sat beside an old comrade when he was ill and nursed him back to health. And you have been patient in your enforced poverty and encourage others to hope for the best and be contented. Have you not? Well, yes, I did sit beside old Bill a bit, but he had done the same for me if I had wanted it. I don't know much about the rest, but we do. Such deeds are never forgotten with us, and there are many things you wish to do if you but had the power. Such honest will is always accepted by God, as if the deed had been successfully performed. And so you see, we are not wrong. By this time, he had been carried some distance from his body and had assumed his new robes, in which he was triumphantly escorted to one of the many mansions prepared for such as he. What a surprise for him, I remarked, as she concluded. Why, it must have been as great as my own. But where are these homes you speak of? I have not seen anything in the shape of a building yet. They are over the crest of the hill. Have you not been on top? No. Come then, let us go. That will enable you to turn your back on the mist, and I will show you the country in another direction. So that's the end of chapter 2. And we will go more about chapter 2, chapter 3, I should say, next week. Now we have a question here, and this is by by a person called Redwile. I have been severely attacked by spirits, and I don't feel like I can beat them. How do I put in my head that God is more powerful than them? How do I take that through thought out of my head? So that's a very good question. And one of the things I would suggest you read is the Medium's book by Alan Kardec, and of course you can get that free on PDF. And in it is pray and meditate and ask for help. And then I would actually start reading about Spiritism. As I said before, read my free PDF, Spiritism 101, the Third Revelation. You can get that on PDF, or read the Spirits book. But at first you have to say, you have to understand the context. So a lot of people who have problems are influenced by spirits. And these spirits will try and influence you because of what you had probably done in some past life that you have no memory of. And therefore you have to meditate and pray, do good works, right? Try to help other people as well, and I'm sure you are. And demonstrate that you are beyond what you were in a past life. And then ask these spirits, pray for them too. Say, please help spirits, help these other ones that are trying to influence me. And you will be given assistance, because even Allan Kardec said, if you have enough faith and love and you pray and you are very certain in your spiritual foundation, you can resist that most of the time. But a lot of people need assistance from the spirit world and from your guardian angel. So these people will desist once they are taught to understand that they are wasting their own time, right? By trying to get revenge on you for what they believe you did. That slows down their own progress in heaven, because they think, well, only they can extract revenge. When in actuality, your life, the plans, the blueprints for your life will put you through all these different trials and tribulations for you to learn and to atone for the wrongs you had made. They don't need to be part of that judgment at all. Although I understand a lot of these people who, say that you've done, that bad things have been done to them. So I would study and read about Spiritism. I would pray for help for you, and I would pray for these spirits that attack you and say, look, if I've done something wrong, please forgive me. I'm going to try and demonstrate I'm a better person, and ask for help. And that should make a difference. But what you do is, when you pray and meditate, is do that at the same time. Like, let's say every Tuesday at 7 to 7:15 or 7:30, let's say. And just sit there and go through that and think of that. And then be nice to everyone around you and try to help other people around you. And that's your best method. But educate yourself and read. Let me see if I can show you a copy of the Spirits book, of the Medium's book. I'm sorry. So here's the Medium's book. It probably looks different now, but if you click on Allan Kardec's picture on my blog, nwspiritism.com, it will take you to the Spiritist bookstore, and you can buy that book. You can also, of course, as I said before, type in Allan Kardec space PDF. You can download on PDF for free. You can also get it on Amazon. It's on Amazon. But it's a fascinating book. It tells you all about different spirits and the different levels of spirits and obsessing spirits and what spirits will do. And it will help you a lot. I'd also recommend reading the whole series by Andre Louise, and with No Solar, The Messengers, Missionaries of the Light, because he will go into, and that was by Francisco C. Xavier, and I always call him Chico Xavier, but he will go into it and talk about how they've helped other people who've been obsessed, and they'll actually talk to the spirits that are obsessing. They go, well, why are you doing this? And it's usually like, well, this guy, and sometimes it's even innocent people. It's like, well, this guy's father stole our money, and now we're punishing him because we can't find the father. And it's not nice. And so they'll say, well, it goes, well, how do you do that? Because well, we've learned in the school of Avengers or something. This is pretty sophisticated. That if we take a person and what they think, and we find their kind of their obsessive kind of more inferior thoughts, we'll amplify those back to them and make them obsessed. So they took this one guy who liked money, and we set other spirits around him, and we obsessed him by thinking of money all the time, and he became just like a miser, and he kind of started forgetting about his wife and his great family because we amplified his own thoughts against him. So these are the things that happens. This is why when you start getting to this rut of thinking these annoying things, right, because you're being attacked by spirits, go garden, go do something, get your mind off of that, because what they're doing is they're trying to take the trains of thoughts, they're amplifying them and using them against you. Very sophisticated, very effective. But that's why then you need to start, reading about spiritism, read the Bible, do whatever you can, pray and meditate when you're being bothered by these thoughts. That's so let me know. Hopefully that will help you. And I believe it will. It's helped many people, but try that and see what happens. Okay. To leave you, I would again like to recommend to kind of tie everything together. So this is like my 15th book, The Spirit Realm, Spiritism Revealed, the Reality of Our Existence, which I talk about the spirit realm, the physical realm, which is a subset of the spirit realm, what you are as a spirit, how you grow, what your powers, your attributes of a spirit, what you need to do in the physical life, and what is the future of your life and the future of Earth. And then I have a lot of the books that go down in deeper subjects, how to live inner peace through spiritism and other books. So anyway, I recommend that for you to learn and study about spiritism. I believe that once you understand the immense complexity, and this is what spiritism gives us. Spiritism gives us actionable information about the spirit realm. So we can decide what we want to do. We can decide if we're going to be rebellious, if we're going to decide we're going to take all this stuff, right? Or we're going to decide we're going to be, like Jesus said, be humble and improve yourself. And as more I research, it's like, I think you should be humble and improve yourself, because this environment is so complex and so powerful. It's like you standing in front of a tsunami thinking that you're not going to be swept away. Go with the flow, because first of all, the flow is love and wonderful. And although I know there's a lot of school of thought to saying, oh, we're just slaves, the spirits on earth. And no, I can see why people think that, because you can, at a certain attitude. And if you keep trying to resist that, you can see that might, can be a person's thoughts, but no, it's not true. We are here. We are surrounded by love. We're surrounded by other spirits who want us to improve and become productive members of Spirit's society. Anyway, I want to say good night and God